Yo, what's up, y'all? It's Cohen back here again today with another video. Two things. First of all, I just shaved, so I look about 15. Apologize about that. And second of all, I don't like making lists. I don't like ranking players. It just feels weird to me because I'm going to give you this list and there's going to be so many split hairs. Like, there's so many players that you could switch and move around. It's really just based on personal preference. And basketball is such a subjective sport. Something that I value more in a player you might not value quite as much. There are players that in modern basketball's kind of positionless, so there's a lot of people that could be on this list, but I kind of think of more as shooting guards. I'm kind of just going off of what Basketball Reference said the positions were for these guys. So today, I'm giving you my top 10 point guards list. You're going to hate it. I can guarantee it now. To give some honorable mentions to people that really didn't make this list, Kyle Lowry is not on here. I thought he was going to be. I made the list. He just quite didn't make it for me. He was like right there on the fringe. I think he's going to have a really big year for the Miami Heat, but I think a lot of what the value he's probably going to bring to them is more so how he improves the players around him, which is something you can value when making a list like this. I just didn't think he was better right now than the guys that I put above him. Other guys, including like a Fred VanVleet, whether you think of him as a point guard or a shooting guard, he's not on this list. LaMelo Ball is not on here, and some other people that I guarantee you I'm forgetting the names of. A guy that won't be on here is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think of him more as a point guard. He was our point guard this past season, but Basketball Reference has him listed as a shooting guard, so that's the list he's going to be on when that list comes around at some point. I think I want to go through every position. I don't ever think I'm going to do here are my top 10 players in the NBA or here are my top 50 players, but if you do really want to see that, let me know in the comment section below. Also, leave a like on this video if you want to see the other positions. That'll kind of let me know that I'm not wasting my time making these ranking videos because they're really difficult for me and I'm going to get hate for them because that's just the way it works. So going into this, I try to take bias out of it. So there might be some players that I like more than others, or players that I kind of like. We'll talk about it more when we get to like the list with the shooting guards. But for the point guard list, there's not a ton of players I'm super biased towards. Not a ton of Thunder guys, other than two guys that used to play for the team. So we're gonna go ahead and get into this list with my number 10 point guard, and that is Ja Morant. Morant had a great playoff run. He led this team to the playoffs, and he outdueled Steph Curry, who, spoiler alert, is going to be a lot later on this list. He outdueled him in a playing game, which was a phenomenal feat. He had an all-around great season. He keeps getting better. He is a little bit injury prone, which I really didn't factor into this because I don't think that's his fault at all. But if he's able to stay healthy, Ja's going to quickly rise up this list. He is so damn good, and his ability to play make very well, his ability to score, even if his three-point shot isn't falling, is very Russell Westbrook-esque. I know that was his comparison that a lot of people made as he came into the league as a hyper-athletic point guard with a lot of playmaking potential as well. If Ja can beef up a little bit defensively, that'll be a huge addition as well. This is going to be a big year for him because no more Jonas Valanciunas, which takes a lot away from him, but I think it'll open up the game for him a little bit more personally to develop, and I think Ja has a big year coming. At the number 9 spot is someone who I think is super underrated in this league, and that is De'Aaron Fox. I love De'Aaron Fox's game. He is a super underrated player because he plays for the Sacramento Kings. An argument that you can make against him, and for example, to put Ja Morant over him, which is something I considered, is that the Kings just haven't been good. Fox hasn't been enough to lift them up out of kind of the depths of the NBA and bring them to a borderline playoff team. And you can argue that is De'Aaron Fox's fault, but I would more so argue that's the lack of talent around him. Ja Morant has like Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr. when he's healthy. He wasn't healthy most of this past season, but the season before. Jonas Valanciunas is a far better player than anyone that De'Aaron Fox has had to help him out. De'Aaron Fox needs more help, and I think it is coming. I think Davion Mitchell is going to be a really good pairing with him. I think they have to move on from Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes to put more pieces around him. Richaun Holmes is pretty solid. You might see him on the top 10 centers list, which, once again, if you want to see it, make sure to leave a like on this video. But I think Fox is underrated, especially his finishing. Fox had this past season one of the best finishing seasons of all time by a guard. He's really, really good. I just don't think he gets a lot of attention because he plays in Sacramento. If you have the opportunity, watch more De'Aaron Fox. And also while I'm at it, as I do every time I talk about the Kings, I'm going to once again advocate for them to fire Luke Walton because one of De'Aaron Fox's biggest strengths is running in transition. And before they had Luke Walton, they were running all the time. They just barely missed out on the playoffs that season. It was I think it was 2019 was the season where they just barely missed the playoffs. They were in contention right up until the end. And they end up going with Luke Walton the next season to be their head coach, and they stopped running the ball as much, and it doesn't make sense to me. When De'Aaron Fox is your point guard, you run in transition, you get the ball going, and I would love to see them do that more this upcoming season with a guy like Davion Mitchell as well on the roster. I hope that's the way they trend towards because people need to learn about how good De'Aaron Fox is. At number 8, I have Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday is a great player. I don't need to tell you that. Now an NBA champion. He was very inconsistent. And that's my biggest problem with him, is his inconsistency offensively, but the defense that he brings and the way that he impacts every single possession and is so effective in games, even if he isn't working great offensively, is why I have him up here on this part of the list. Jrue is a lockdown defender. He could be a guard that could win Defensive Player of the Year at some point. He's kind of older in age, so he's not going to do it, but he is that caliber of a defender. An all NBA first team defender pretty much every single season, or he should be. A lot of people kind of forgot about him these past couple years, but happy to see that he is back on that team this past season. Jrue is great. And the way that he impacted that Bucks championship run every single minute he was on the court, if he wasn't scoring, he was stripping someone of the ball. He was making life hell for one of the offensive players on the other end. And he was just all around being a great teammate and someone that really helps his team win. That's the biggest thing for Jrue Holiday. And there's a reason Chris Paul is going to be higher on my list than maybe some other people's. And that's because I think Chris Paul helps his team win in substantial ways. Sometimes things go beyond the stat sheet, and that's what a lot of, I think, Jrue Holiday is. He goes way beyond the stat sheet, and if you watch him play, you'll understand why he is above Fox and Ja for me. At number 7, this is one that's going to be controversial. I've got Russell Westbrook here, and I know he's below Chris Paul, which is going to be the big thing that people are going to get mad at me for as a Thunder fan. But I need to see a little bit more from Russell Westbrook. I know he's really good. He had crazy stats this past season. The problem was the Wizards weren't very good. I think Russell Westbrook is going to prove a lot of people wrong this next season when he plays for the Lakers and he's back playing winning basketball. And I do think Russ can still be super effective in playing winning basketball. The Wizards just weren't good enough this past season. And I know their supporting cast was not very good. They were injury plagued. But the Wizards weren't good enough this past season for me to justify moving him up, I don't think, and sounding kind of biased. I love Westbrook. Westbrook is my favorite basketball player of all time, and I really, really hope he wins a ring this season with the Lakers. I'm rooting for them to win it all because, spoiler alert, the Thunder probably aren't. So I'm rooting for them to win it all. I want to see Russ get a ring, but for right now, I'm going to leave him here at 7. I think he could go up to 6, potentially maybe even 5, but for right now, this is where I'm going to leave him. At number 6, we've got Chris Paul. Chris Paul was the best player most nights on a Suns team that was one of the best teams in the league and made the NBA Finals. That's the reason I have him here, is because of the recent postseason success. By the way, this is just the way I see them at the moment. This is not at all saying like over the course of their careers or anything, which like we'll get to a couple of guys that are not nearly as accomplished as Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook. This is just right now what I'm thinking about them at the moment that I made this list. But Chris Paul was the best player a lot of nights on a team that went to the finals. I have to give that credit to Chris Paul. I have to give him this spot. I think he's another player that goes way beyond what the stat sheet shows. He had some huge performances in the playoffs as well, especially in the closeout game in the Western Conference Finals. He is an all-around great player. He's a great playmaker. He makes all of his teammates better, and every second he's on the court, he's impacting the game in some way. His ridiculous signature mid-range jumper that can go in for over any single defender. It's unreal. I'm happy for Chris Paul, and I would love to see the Suns make another run this upcoming season because he is another one of my favorite players. At number 5, I've got Trae Young. Trae Young proved me a little bit wrong this season. Trae Young is someone that I thought really wasn't ready yet to elevate his team as high as he elevated them. I didn't expect him to make the Eastern Conference Finals. They were a pick by a lot of people to go out in the first round. I didn't even know if the Hawks were going to make the playoffs. If I remember correctly, I didn't predict them to make the playoffs coming into this season. And instead, they came in, got the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference after a massive second half run behind Nate McMillan after they fired Lloyd Pierce. And a lot of that was because Nate McMillan kind of just let Trae go. He said, Trae, make what you want to happen. And a lot of credit does have to go to their general manager, who created such a good team around Trae Young. But the way that Trae Young elevates his team, once again, even if he's not scoring. For example, Game 7 in Philly, even though Trae Young really struggled to score, he was continuously putting his teammates in positions to make great shots. He was setting them up. He was being a decoy on a lot of possessions. Trae has mastered the art of the pick and roll very early in his career. It already feels like every time he and Clint Capella go to a pick and roll, something is going to come out of that because he's either going to hit you with a floater that he has on lock. That Trae Young floater is ridiculously efficient. It feels like it never misses. In addition to being able to pull from like 30 feet out, throw lobs effortlessly to Clint Capella if that floater gets contested. Trae has mastered the art of manipulating defenses, and he's only going to get better. Trae is a incredible talent, and we are so lucky to see him in the league as NBA fans. I'm excited to see what he does going forward. He gets the 5th spot on my list. At number 4, Kyrie Irving. I feel like a lot of people have been sleeping on Kyrie Irving. If you didn't know, a lot of people have been making these lists, and I've seen a lot of people put Kyrie down at like 5 or 6 even. Kyrie's ridiculous. Best handles of all time. He's a ridiculously efficient player. He shot 50, 40, 90, which if you don't know what that means, it means he shot 50% from the field, 40% from three-point range, and 90% from the free throw line over the course of this season. And if you didn't know, that's super rare. The 50, 40, 90 club is thought of as like one of the most exclusive clubs in NBA history because very few players ever shoot that efficiency. Now, given it was in a very shortened season because he dealt with a lot of injuries, some personal issues, so it wasn't over the course of like 82 games or anything, but that efficiency from Kyrie Irving on the scoring volume that he's able to output is ridiculous. Kyrie is super good. He does benefit a little bit from having James Harden and Kevin Durant by his side to give him aid, to get him easier shots, because the defense has to think about those guys a little bit more than maybe the next 3 guys on this list. But Kyrie's great. Don't forget how good Kyrie is just because he plays with great teammates. Number 3 on my list. This is where it gets tough, because there are 3 guys that I think are by far and away the top 3 point guards in the league. They're Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, and Damian Lillard. And I think one of those guys is a little bit above the other 2, but we'll get to that. But I really debated between Dame and Luka here at this 3 spot. And I went with Dame. When I look at over the course of this past season, Dame was ridiculous. He is super talented, and he is someone that is capable of winning an MVP before he retires. Still, at this point in his career. The problem was this past season, he was phenomenal, and I really don't think there's much more he could have done in that series against the Nuggets. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way, the way that they went out to a super battered Nuggets team. Luka Doncic also didn't have a lot of help, but he had more help Damian Lillard had more help than Luka did, and Luka took the Clippers to 7 games. So for right now, I'm leaving Dame here at 3. I think 3 and 2 are interchangeable, but right now I kind of give Luka the edge at 2 over Damian Lillard. Luka is a ridiculous playmaker. He is already become a legendary playoff performer in just 2 playoff series. It's such a shame that he's had to play the Clippers twice, because I think there's very few other teams with the way Luka played in that first round series that would have beaten the Mavericks in that first round. Luka's ridiculous. I want to see him get a second star to kind of help ease the burden, but he puts up ridiculous stats. He is efficient, and he elevates his game in the playoffs. He does have some issues shooting free throws here and there, but his ability to really carry an offensive load, similar to the way that Damian Lillard and our top spot guy, it's Steph. You don't need to worry about it being spoiled at this point. The way that he's able to carry an offensive load is a generational skill. There are very few players that we've seen in recent memory that can carry a team the way that Luka Doncic can every single night offensively. Luka is a generational talent, and I think he's going to win an MVP, probably even multiple, throughout his career. And I think by the end of Luka's career, and starting maybe even this season, I think this season is the one where he finally breaks out of that first round, and where maybe he is an MVP candidate. He just needs that team success. By the end of it all, I think Luka is going to be one of the greatest players of all time, and we're super lucky and privileged to see the start of this career. Finally, at the number 1 spot, we have, obviously, Steph Curry. It wasn't going to be anyone else. It shouldn't be anybody else. If your top 10 list doesn't have Steph Curry at the top, then your top 10 list is wrong. And I'm someone who believes that lists should be subjective. So, overall, Steph Curry is maybe the best player in the entire NBA, if some people look at it in a certain way. I don't know if he is or not. I think he is top 3 at like the worst. Steph is ridiculous. He had a monster season. He could have been MVP if his teammates were just a bit better. He is currently my pick to win the MVP for this upcoming season, just because I think the Warriors are going to be much better. The return of Klay Thompson, the rise of maybe a guy like Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins really stepped it up at the end of last season. James Wiseman is going to have had an off season, and this time a full off season, including training camps and everything, to really progress and get better after last year's kind of weird half off season. I think it's going to be a good year for the Warriors, and I think Steph Curry is going to be at the forefront of that. He had a season last year that rivaled his unanimous MVP season. That's how good he was. He had one of the best offensive seasons we've ever seen, and he was a guy that a lot of people coming into the year said he couldn't carry a team. He was going to be exposed coming into this year, and Steph went out and proved every single person wrong. There's no doubt in my mind that Steph Curry is the number 1 point guard in the NBA right now, and maybe even the best player in the league to some people. Not sure if it's me or not, but Steph's ridiculous, and he deserves all the credit that he got for this past season. He deserved to be in the MVP conversation. I'm not saying he deserved to win because his team wasn't that good, But the way that Steph played and the way that every single night he carried this team, there was that one night where he was out and they lost the Raptors by like 60 points. That really should show you all you need to know about how valuable Steph was to this team. So Steph Curry is my number one point guard. To round out my list, I'll go back and kind of recap it. At 10, we had John Morant, 9, De'Aaron Fox, 8, Drew Holiday, 7, Russell Westbrook, 6, Chris Paul, 5, Trae Young, 4, Kyrie Irving, 3, Damian Lillard, 2, Luka Doncic, and number 1 was Steph Curry. Those are my top 10 point guards right now. This list could very well change even like a couple games into the season, but for right now, this is what I've got. Let me know in the comment section below what your list is. What would you change? What did I get wrong? What did I get right? Leave a like if you want to see the rest of these videos. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.